My name is Sadie Cinader, and thank you so much for tuning into my podcast today. I'm here with Amy Ma, who is an inspiring woman in the field of business and biotechnology. Amy is an investment analyst at the Biotechnology Value Fund. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today to speak with me. And to start, can you tell me a little bit about your company and the work that you are doing right now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Sadie, for having me. So my name is Amy. I work at a firm called Biotech Value Fund, which is an investment fund that's been around for 30 years. BVF, as you can tell by the name, primarily invests in publicly traded pre-commercial biotech technology companies and sometimes invests in private ones as well. And typically, the range of companies we'll invest in ranges from like 50 million to 3 billion, which is about 700 companies or so across the globe.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a very large scale. And can you tell us about your academic background that led you to working at this company and in the business and biotech field?
Yeah, sure. So I went to school at UChicago. I studied biology and economics there, and I kind of realized that I didn't want to do research when I was in college. I wanted to do something more at the intersection of biology and business. So then after undergrad, I worked at a firm called Synerview Partners, which is an investment bank that advises biotech companies. So I got exposure to the field and a lot of biotech companies that way. And then that led me to my current job now at BVF.
Yeah, definitely. And can you tell me how it compares working at Synergy versus your current work at BVF?
So they're completely different roles. So Synerview Partners is an investment bank that works on mergers and acquisitions transactions. So typically this would be large pharma, or when like a large pharma company wants to buy a smaller biotech company, we would help in to facilitate that transaction and give advice to the company in different strategic situations. Now, at my current firm, BVF, we invest in companies, which means when companies need capital, which biotech companies always do in order to fund their research, we would be the ones to give them capital and fund their clinical trials to hopefully get drugs to the market.
Definitely. Okay, that's super interesting and very interesting roles that come one after the other. And when you were in high school, what did you want to pursue? Did you know that you wanted to do economics and biology, or was that something that came to you later while you were at college?
Um, in high school, I did things like science Olympiad, and I remember doing like the USA Biology Olympiad. I don't know if that's still around or if people do that. But I did enjoy like life sciences in high school, but I didn't have any idea of business. So I grew up in Houston, in Texas,
Okay.
and no one was really doing like none of my friends' parents or anything were like working at the intersection of biotech and business.
Yeah.
So I was familiar with biology and with like research roles, but not much more. So I'm glad like you and hopefully your classmates will learn more about roles beyond that.
Yes, definitely. And that's, of course, a major point of this podcast to learn about the different roles. And I am super interested. I'm applying to colleges right now and choosing which major. I'm thinking a little bit of economics. I'm a big math person, but also biology. I've been super interested in and doing research and stuff like that. So it's great to see where those can intersect and the different roles that you've had at that intersection, I guess, if that makes sense. And you kind of touched on like how and when that interest evolved, but like, was there any experience in college that made you that kind of push you away from the research and more towards, I guess, gaining experience in both business and biotech?
Yeah, there was one experience in particular. So I did an internship at UChicago at the George Shultz Innovation Fund,
Mm.
which is basically UChicago's venture capital wing that writes $250,000 checks um, into companies spun out of the university. So from like its bio labs and like professors and postdocs that wanted to start companies around their research. So I think that was the most influential experience for me. This is like really early stage venture capital. Um, if you can even call it that since it's so early, but it was
Mhm.
oftentimes just like an idea and they wanted like a little bit of seed funding to get it off the ground. But it was really awesome to like learn from these like professors um, and think about the ways that their research could be turned into products, into drugs that could then be used to on people, on patients,
Mhm.
and like make an impact. I think that was the thing that appealed to me the most, because in VC, in investing and working with companies, you can kind of see the impact that they're making. Versus like in research, you might like work on one cool scientific question, but you're a little bit removed from like human patient impact.
Definitely. I haven't thought about that much before, but seeing that, I guess the key work that you can do to make that impact and having it be very visible sounds super impactful and interesting. And I can see why someone would be drawn to that. I really like that. And then why did you become interested in biotech focused investment funds as opposed to other investment banking positions? You kind of touched on this a bit. I understand seeing the impact and stuff like that, but I also saw that you had worked at JP Morgan and other banking places in the past. So I'm just curious if there was anything that really motivated or sparked that shift.
Yeah, I think it was just my interest in the research and in
Mhm.
life sciences. Um, and part of like our roles now as in investing is like being very close to the science. So like reading scientific papers, staying on top of like clinical trials, and even before, like even earlier stage in that, um, like the mice work as well, and like preclinical experiments. So if you like science, you would like working in biotech.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And then what challenges have you faced in your field and to getting to the position that you are at now?
I think trying to think of just like the biggest challenge. I think part of it was kind of like even knowing how to start was really challenging because I wasn't really aware of like the different roles or like what the job could be. But I guess now what I think is like the biggest challenge is like constantly learning, but that there's so much to learn. Um, so part of what we do in investing is just like meeting with a lot of companies and learning about them. But there's just like an ocean of knowledge that there is to know. Whereas I feel like I'm always I guess like using like a cup to try to scoop up the ocean, watching the surface. And there's just like so much to learn. So I guess that's kind of like a blessing and a curse where
Yeah.
like it's so awesome to be constantly learning about interesting things and interesting companies, but it's pretty challenging to like try to stay on top and feel like I know like the most important parts.
Definitely. I love the metaphor of a cup trying to scoop up the ocean. That really puts it into perspective for me to like, understand what that challenge would be like, but also a lot of opportunity to learn, which I think is super interesting. And, always learning, even past college, even past high school, and all of that. So that's super interesting to hear. And then kind of moving on, or actually, one more question in this space is just how does your educational background, so studying biology, studying economics at UChicago, affect or come in handy, I guess, in your everyday work, or in what ways have you seen it be helpful?
Yeah, I mean I think it's definitely helpful that I studied biology in undergrad because I think that's helpful just to like know the fundamentals of what's going on when I'm like meeting with biotech companies. Um, and I actually think there are maybe my economics degree like is a little bit helpful in thinking of like the market opportunity and thinking about I guess like supply and demand and like the potential like scarcity value of a company or like the impact that they can make. I do feel like the biology degree is more relevant though. So if you want to work in like biotech VC or biotech like public investing, I would definitely recommend like a biology undergrad degree and maybe even like a more advanced degree. Like I don't have a PhD, but there's it's like some of my colleagues do, and that's helpful, I'm sure, to them. And yeah, so I guess I'm grateful to have at least the undergrad experience.
Okay, got it. That makes a lot of sense, and that's great to hear. And thank you for the advice, of course. And then shifting more into lifestyle, what does a typical workday look like for you, and how has that shifted in your different roles?
Yeah, I guess every day is like a little bit different because every day like we're like learning about like different companies and like researching like new topics. But I think like a typical day, so on the West Coast we get up like very early or like around 5
Wow.
so we can
Okay.
track of like the news um that have come in that morning, and then after after trying to stay on top of like the new developments, there's like a lot of research and like meeting with companies. So for like whatever project I'm working on that involves like talking often to like a lot of different people, like doctors or scientists, um, or like people on the business side as well. And yeah, I think I would kind of summarize it as like doing research to learn. I guess my job is like to due diligence, and I would define doing diligence as like researching and learning about things.
Wow, definitely. That's super interesting and sounds like a packed early work day, but sounds like a lot of fun and you're learning a lot, which is great. And then also, how do you manage your work-life balance? So if you are waking up at 5 in the morning to keep in contact with the stuff that's happening on the East Coast and the news, what, how do you manage that balance and how do you keep balance in your life?
Yeah, I think my firm does like a really good job of just having like a good culture where it feels like I can like take the time that I need or want for myself. I do feel like because we're in general on the West Coast, like in San Francisco, firms that wake up earlier tend to wrap up a little bit earlier. But I guess in response to your question of like balance, when I'm working, I try to like put 100% in, but then when I'm not working, I also try to just not think about work and like also like be 100% on like my hobbies or spending time with friends. So I think
Definitely.
that's how I do it.
Yeah, that sounds like a healthy balance. And the putting in 100% and also knowing when to step back is something interesting and sounds very healthy and good. So, yeah. And then also, what has been the most rewarding part of your career so far?
Um, hmm. Um, I think what's I find really rewarding about my job is that you kind of get like we're trying to like determine like the truth as an investor, like the true value of something, or um like what is the probability of something happening, and then um you kind of get to see the answer, and I get to like know if I'm right or not. Which and for sure that's not with like 100% clarity. Since a lot of times there are things left up to chance, and there's just like a lot of things that are like wild cards or like you can't really plan for. But I think it's really rewarding to kind of like have an argument that I construct like an investment case to either like invest or not invest in something. And it's kind of like writing a paper where you have to come up with an argument of like why you should or shouldn't do it. And then like a couple months later or like a year later or even a couple years later, you'll have like the right answer, or like you'll see what is like the right thing that you should have done. So I think that's really rewarding to kind of have like a mechanism of that's like teaching you um all the time, like every day like the market like tells me whether I'm right or wrong. So it's really rewarding to kind of like put money where my mouth is and like test a hypothesis that I have, test the argument, and then be proven either right or wrong.
Definitely. That's super interesting way to put it. And wow, that's fascinating. I love that. And then my last question is something that I ask everyone on the podcast. And it's, what piece of advice do you have for young women who are interested in the field of biotech and for their careers and for their future? Anything that you have from, having your own path, having your own career, and also being surrounded by colleagues who have also had their own paths in the field of biotech.
I think what you're doing now with like learning about different roles is awesome to start early on. Because I think even with so I work at an investment fund right now, but even investment funds like come in different shapes and sizes and cultures. So you can have like very different experiences. So even if like you don't really like what I'm saying, or like my job doesn't sound that interesting to you, there could still be things like there could still be like an investment fund that suits what your style and what you're interested in. So I think just there's like a whole range of possible careers. So definitely trying to learn from different people and different roles is really useful. So that's one piece. I think the second piece is also like knowing yourself. I remember in college, it was like very easy to get caught up with in like what other people are doing, like what the majority of people seem to be doing. But like at the end of the day, it's like your life. So like you want to pick a career that like makes you happy every day when you wake up. So you have to like know yourself really well and like know like what would make you happy, like waking up every day. So my second piece of advice would just be to like not skip on self-reflection. And like whenever, if you take like a class in college, like just like whether it's like biology or like whatever field, like really think about like what did I enjoy, what did I not enjoy, or like if you're in a club, um, and there's like parts of it that you're really interested in or don't like, I would just like reflect really hard on that, and just like try to know yourself, and know your interests, the earlier the better.
Okay, definitely. That's great advice. I like the not skipping on self-reflection because I think it's definitely would be super important. Or I'd love to have a job that I find to be constantly rewarding, like you were just talking about, with you get to have hypotheses and then have them tested every single day. That sounds fascinating, and I really think self-reflection is a key fact or key piece, I guess, of finding a job that you find rewarding. And I'm glad that you found that. So thank you so much for the advice. I really appreciate it. And I am so happy to have heard your story and the path that you've chosen. It's really fascinating and it's really inspiring to me to see what you can do, especially taking that intersection point between economics and biotech, because that is definitely something that I'm interested in. So I really like hearing your story and kind of how you got to the place that you are now. And I'm really glad you enjoy it and have found that healthy work-life balance and all of that. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening to her wonderful story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.